Hello everyone, and this is my review for Monday Night Raw on August 4th, 2014. And I'll go to say, overall, I felt they did a good job of building storyline towards the pay-per-views. The SummerSlam pay-per-view. The beginnings with Roman Reigns, against the match with Roman Reigns and Kane, I felt was kind of a lackluster last man standing match, especially with the ending there. Also, it didn't really help that the you kind of break up the flow of the match when the ref isn't actually always counting the person that's down. But you saw that in multiple occasions in the match as well, so it kind of broke up the flow of the match, and it just came off as kind of a lackluster last man standing match in my own opinion. But overall, it wasn't a horrible match by any stretch. But in the senses of building up for Roman Reigns and Randy Orton, it kind of did what it was supposed to do. He took out another another person from the Authority. Orton, of course, cut his promo later in the show, and you got a smaller build this week for that one, considering how much they did building that storyline with the beatdown from the week before, which also has for the Paige and AJ Lee storyline. They made that match for the pay-per-view. Hopefully they'll put a stipulation on it, maybe like a submission match or something like that. But again, it was just another promo going in there. No match, because they're kind of selling off of what happened with AJ from Friday night, so she wasn't on the show and everything. So you had Paige cutting a promo, cut a pretty decent promo on it too, in that sense. So they did it. They've been, they were building up smallly on certain storylines in that aspect. The Alberto Del Rio Dean Ambrose match, the whole beat the clock challenge between Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, I felt was a really good match, and just a great way of telling the story of, like, you have Dean Ambrose who still has his hurt shoulder, and the Authority makes a match with him against somebody who has like an armbar submission for his victory, and just how the match built and built and built to eventually, even though Dean Ambrose wins, it makes it feel like Seth Rollins is going to prevail in the end, getting the win over his opponent, which at the time was RVD. And then classic swerve right at the last second, you have them switch it over to Heath Slater to make it really look like he was going to pull out the victory, and then the whole distraction with Dean Ambrose, dealing with the Money in the Bank briefcase. I felt that was a good story building between the two of them, considering the fact that last Monday night they had no story build at all because Dean Ambrose wasn't even on the show to begin with, and it was good to see some kind of, even though it was just a distractionary measure and everything, to build their storyline a little bit more. I know they've built a lot of it through the past months, but build it a little bit more going into the pay-per-view, and we'll see what they come up with next week for Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. And that brings me to the Stephanie McMahon and Brie Bella the contract signing that they decided to have going into the SummerSlam pay-per-view. Again, this ended the show, which I still find that kind of weird. It feels like this is like an end of second hour type deal, but without Brock Lesnar or John Cena on the show to begin with, I guess in the end that's probably the next, the biggest storyline that they got going, at least with mainstays of the characters. And I thought the contract signing was, it was a pretty good one. It was a good way of getting Stephanie over as the dominant force going into the match itself, almost making it feel like there's no chance for Brie Bella to win. And they've done a decent job of building this storyline, and the promos by Brie have gotten better over the past couple weeks. They aren't great, but Stephanie kind of makes up for that. She's always been good on the mic, and then of course making her the dominant force, getting the pedigree over on Nikki Bella and Brie Bella. It was a good way of building. It was just, again, weird placement for me with how they had it in the show, and yeah, just a little bit weird on that sense. But that actually will bring me into, well, not transitioning, but but I will go ahead and talk about the Chris Jericho Bray Wyatt storyline. They had the match with Chris Jericho and Eric Rowan, where if Jericho won, he would Rowan would be banned from ringside. That was on Friday night. This week, this time around, it was Luke Harper. Same stipulations, and I actually kind of like where they went with it. You had Eric Rowan out there with Luke Harper, and you're having a pretty good match between the two of them, and kind of like in almost of an arrogance way. You have Bray Wyatt, even though Jericho looked like he was about to win, Bray Wyatt comes out and causes the disqualifications. Like, he doesn't need these two at ringside for the pay-per-view match with him and Jericho. So there'll be a little bit interesting of a build going for them into the next week. Hopefully they'll come up with something really good for right before going into SummerSlam. And we'll see where they go with Chris Jericho and Bray Wyatt. I actually have been enjoying their program so far, and hopefully they'll continue. On even after the SummerSlam pay-per-view. This will bring me into the last bit, which was they did air it twice. The Brock Lesnar John Cena interview that they spliced together between the two of them, and this honestly was the whole already shot interview is the best way to get Brock Lesnar on the mic, because he can actually talk up a good game as long as he's not live. The promo that he cut on John Cena, the whole talking about him beating the Undertaker's streak, talking about his UFC time, he's going to go out there and he just the only thing he cares about is beating up the person that he's supposed to go up against, and of course how he's going to do this to John Cena, what he's going to do, and how he's going to leave John Cena at SummerSlam came off really good. And like I said, this is probably the one time that Brock Lesnar's been on the mic over the last couple of years where he's actually been really good in his talk. And of course it wasn't a live actual promo, it was of course it being a taped promo. I believe that's how that came off being so good. He's good in that situation versus the live in front of a crowd situation. And then in tow, John Cena, cutting his, not necessarily typical promo. If it was his typical promo, he'd just be making corny kid jokes and everything like that. But, cutting his more serious type promos, which is the ones that I personally enjoy a little bit more, is when he's a little bit more serious about the match and how it's going to go with SummerSlam and how he's going to come out on top. I felt they did a really good job of building this without necessarily having the two of them in the actual arena to build the match itself, and hopefully they'll do something next week in the actual arena to finish off this storyline going into SummerSlam, and we'll see where they go along with that. Overall, I felt it was a decent show. It wasn't anything spectacular. I felt they did a very good job of building storylines going into the pay-per-view. The biggest problem I had with the entire show was the announcers. The entire show. Them cutting into matches and everything, and having to plug WWE Network and the $9.99 deal every 2 to 3 minutes within a match even. Or 2, 3, 4, 5 times during one match they would plug the network in there and do that over the entire thing. It almost made the show unwatchable. I felt like it could have been a really good show, but the way the announcers were coming off the entire show just makes it a decent show, because they almost make it unwatchable in this sense with how much they were plugging the network and the whole internet going international next week, and how much it costs and everything like that. It was insufferable with how Michael Cole, King, and JBL were going through that with the entire show itself. If they were just plugging it in between matches or something like that, it would have been fine, but they're going through it in the middle of matches and everything, and you know, it was fine when it was kind of fine when Triple H did, because it was just like one blurb during his promo, and then it was done. But they were just going on and on and on and on and on and on for the entire show. That's what made it really bad. Was how the announcers just kept going on throughout the entire show about the network and everything. I know they've been having issues with subscriptions and everything, and they're trying to get more people to subscribe, but that is definitely not the best way to pull it off. And yeah, so overall, like I said, a decent show outside of the announcers having to do what they did the entire time. And that's my review this week for Monday Night Raw, and I thank you guys for watching.